Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Yes, we're back. We disappeared last week. Steve, good morning.
Hi, mate. How you going?
Okay, who's to blame for last week? Because I had a few people reach out to me saying, was everything okay? And I really appreciate the concern.
I'm happy to take the blame. I went away for a couple of days.
Steve went on a holiday.
If you can call it a holiday. It was my sister-in-law's 40th. We, as in myself, my direct family, as in my wife and kids, plus my wife's family, have not ventured out much at all. Hired a Airbnb house to celebrate my sister-in-law's 40th, and it got off to a shocking start. Anyone out there who's willing to listen, do not deal with Alessandro Dream Homes. Dream Homes, my ass. We got to a house that wasn't cleaned. I had to kind of get down on my hands and knees and clean a 5-bedroom house in 2 hours with very little kind of stuff. It was just a nightmare. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So the place where Steve went, I have lots of family who live in that area. Can we say the area, Steve, or not?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah, so Steve got an Airbnb in Buff Point, and when he told me it was Buff Point, anyone in Sydney or New South Wales will know where I'm probably talking about. I just said Budgewoi, because I always know Buff Point as Budgewoi. I never think of it as Buff Point. To me, it's just Budgewoi.
I had no idea where it was.
But my niece lives there, and there's a certain smell that comes off the lake there on the Central Coast in certain areas, and when it comes off the lake...
it smells like ass.
It's terrible. And I told Steve in the first message he sent me, I think that first evening, wasn't it? He said, your niece was right about the lake. Yeah. So anyway, we jump straight in. My name is Michael Barth. That's Steve on the other end. If you haven't been here before, welcome to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Like I said last week, Steve went on his little Airbnb holiday, and I decided that it's probably best just to skip a week. I was having a few issues myself, which I won't talk about, but I was having a few dilemmas. So we're back this week anyway. So I apologize for no episodes last week. Yeah. There was a lot going on last week, so in my head more so than outside my head, so that was probably the problem. Steve.
Yep.
In our last episode, I want to go straight into this because I know you got a strong opinion about it. In our last episode, you said that the Macan wasn't a real Porsche. You actually said that. You said you don't see it as a real Porsche. And I said, we're going to get so much feedback about that. Surprisingly...
Did you get feedback?
Surprisingly, no one disagreed with you. I had no messages about it. No one was upset that you said that. So I guess there's not a lot of love for the Macan. Now, everyone probably knows, and I'm guessing this is a worldwide release, that the new Macan... It's not really new. It's I'm going to call it the run-out Macan because that's what happens when you get to the end, right? The Macan T was launched, Steve. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, okay, I'm misreading this. Surely they're not putting the T on a Macan. What do you think?
What a travesty. What are they doing? It's like, I know like the 911 T, the 991 was quite well received, and at first everybody was a little bit cynical, and I was one of those because it's like, is this a marketing exercise?
Yeah, I was as well.
Is it really going to make enough of a difference? Then, people got a hold of them, journos got into them, people, normal people. Is it like David with the touring? He had one, didn't he?
Yes.
Lots of people kind of jumped into it, and then seems like everybody sort of felt like it was a great model unto its own. And it sort of referenced sort of more like a enthusiast, slightly more lightweight kind of spec car. But how on earth can you do that on a Macan? Who's gonna care that the sort of like mini SUV thing is sort of a little bit lighter? Is that how it's been spec'd?
Well, in the thing that I read, and the couple of things that I read, I took a few notes. It's about, in Australia, I think it starts at 91,500. It's still the 4-cylinder, right? So it's still the 2-litre.
Yep.
I mean, the 2-litre.
It's the one not to get, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the S engine, it's a 2-litre. I know you say it's not the one to get, but when I'm in the North Shore here in Sydney, when I go to, Natasha's parents, my in-laws' house, we see so many Macans, and I see so many base Macans, and they're new ones. It's very weird. Like, it seems
I can
like
see why
the
people do it. Don't get me wrong. I do actually see why people do it. It's a different market to probably the type of person that's listening to this podcast. Like, it's like as SUVs kind of go, it's a nice car. Like, you know, I'm not sort of saying that I hate like my wife's car or anything. Not at all. I'd be like a spoiled brat if I did. It's just a very different sort of thing. So like for an SUV, I prefer it to, you know, Audis and Touaregs and Volvos and all of that sort of stuff for sure. But what I sort of feel as a Porsche, you know, in terms of more like a sports car or whatever else, like I just don't quite see how it doesn't sort of marry up.
Yeah, and the T nameplate thing is a little bit weird because we all know the T comes from 1967 or 8, right? 1967 or 1968, 911 T. 1968, I think it was, you know, which was the air-cooled engine, you know. Then they added the T to the 718. Even on the T on the 718, I thought was a little bit odd, to be honest with you. I just thought it should just...
Did that get good reviews? Can't remember.
I can't remember seeing much about it as it just disappeared. But, you know, the T stands for touring, right? The T stands for touring. So I guess touring on an SUV kind of makes sense. But I mean, you know, to offer a this is the article I've read, an especially authentic driving experience thanks to the precise tuning, exclusive equipment, and efficient engines. It's like, okay, but you're giving the 2-liter engine. You're giving it, what are they giving it? They're giving it, it's a PDK, obviously. They're giving it better suspension. They're giving it, it's lowered by 15 millimeters compared to the entry-level Macan. Has PASM, electronic adaptive dampers. Can't speak.
Yep.
And then it says the anti-roll bars on the front axle are more rigid and the car's chassis tuning has been optimized for agile handling and very responsive steering behavior. What do you think of that comment, Steve, after driving a turbo Macan?
What a bunch of bollocks.
Exactly. That's what I thought.
Well, I guess that, you know, like when we went out and got our used Macan, we did go and test drive a Touareg. We test drove a Touareg, a Volvo. I can't remember what else. And yeah, for sure, like the Macan handling is more like a sedan than like any other SUV I've driven. So I do appreciate it for that. But, you know, like to sort of say that it's sort of, you know, like you're never going to take that thing and punt it down, you know, the old Pacific Highway or anything like that, you know.
No.
I think when we bought the car, we went for a trip up to Mudgee and Orange kind of thing. And I think my wife fell asleep in the car, so I kind of started to cane it a little bit more. And there's some bits that are kind of fun, like in that car, because there's massive amount of torque. So, you know, it's quite powerful and everything. But would I say it's fun, like driving, say, my mum's old C63, which I've done the same drive to Mudgee in? No, like I much prefer to drive that. Or, you know, it just doesn't kind of compare to me like to a good sort of sports sedan. I would still prefer a sports sedan or wagon over an SUV.
Do you think, though, driving the Macan Turbo, because it is a turbo, does that make you think, hey, maybe I should look at 991 turbos? You know, I want to talk about this a bit later, but should you look at a 991 turbo because of the, like you said, the turbo boost, so to speak, and also being in Marco's car and knowing how Marco's car has that turbo boost? Does that turbo thing become more appealing to you?
I'm not. I think probably depends on the usage, I guess. Like for a fun weekend Sunday kind of cane it down Old Pack Highway or something like that, I think I would probably still prefer a naturally aspirated car, because I sort of feel like it makes you sort of rev it harder and hang on to gears and all of that sort of stuff, which is probably just more engaging, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
But you've heard me talk about my 1M before, and that was a turbo. That was the first sort of turbocharged M car. And I was really surprised at how fun that thing was. So like, I'm certainly not kind of saying, hey, all turbo cars are shit. Not at all. But I think, you know, like if you're kind of talking more like a family truckster or whatever, I can definitely sort of see why a turbocharged engine is appealing. But I probably would kind of go for like if I had the choice, if I was in the market again, I would still probably kind of look for a V8 more more so than a turbo because I just like the sound and the characteristics of that type of
Maybe you
engine.
should look at a V8 Cayenne.
Yeah, well, my uncle's got a GTS.
Speaking of that, the Cayenne, you said your uncle had a Cayenne.
Yeah.
You know, I met Steve's uncle for the first time yesterday. Steve uncle is also...
Well, second
time I met him at Steve's wedding.
You never spoke to him.
I met him at Steve's wedding, but we didn't have a conversation. Yesterday we had bits and pieces of conversation because it was quite busy where we went, and Steve and I are going to talk about that in a second. We went to the Duck and Whale car meet in Sydney at Clontarf Reserve, is it? Clontarf Reserve, is that what they call it?
Yep.
Beautiful spot. I realised I had been there before, and Steve had mentioned it to me. We'd been there many years before I went there with Steve. I think Natasha came along as well.
I proposed to my wife there.
To the concourse. Did you?
Yeah.
Wow. You didn't tell. You should have told us that when we were there. We should have brought a bottle of champagne down, celebrated.
I did the first time, and then when I proposed and I had a sip, and I think I went bright red because I can't hold my liquor because of my Asian genes.
It's a lovely spot down there, that's for sure.
It is.
But we'll get into this. We'll get into the Duck and Whale event because it was quite interesting, and there's a lot of things, a lot of thoughts we have. Steve and I have a lot of thoughts about it. Also, the amount of people as well. You know, now COVID is over, so to speak. Is it really over? That's the question. I mean, it felt like we acted like it was over yesterday, and I've woken up with a sore throat this morning. So I hope it's not what I think it is.
Yep.
So I met Steve's uncle, and you know, your uncle actually said to me, he said that the GTS. I said, what are your favorite cars that you have at the moment? And he said,
Okay.
He said it was a GTS, the Cayenne. He really loves the Cayenne. Yep. You know what I mean? So there you go. And he's had it for a long time, right?
He jumped onto the SUV sort of thing pretty early. Like, so he's a mad car guy, as we've sort of mentioned before. But back when the X5 was launched, he bought an X5 diesel and he raved about that thing. Like, I drove it a couple of times, but I didn't, you know, just SUVs aren't my thing, and I couldn't quite kind of get where he was kind of coming from. And then he traded that X5 diesel. I think he traded it for this GTS Cayenne. And I jumped in that once or twice, and it's like, oh, wow, it sounds so good. The V8 in that thing sounds really, really, really good. But, yeah, like the rest of it in terms of sitting up high and all of that sort of stuff, I still find that a bit ironic because I kind of go, everybody says that they like sitting up high, but then everyone else is sitting up high with you because everyone else is in an SUV these days. So how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I like SUVs more now after being in Bahrain. You know what I mean? Because there's so many. And like a Cayenne is like probably the smallest out of all of them. You know what I mean? Like because all the American ones they have, that it doesn't come across that big, the Cayenne. Macans always look really small there. I mean, because you got huge roads and then you got, you know, other big Escalade, things like that, you know.
Yep.
Not that those sort of cars, I don't think, like the Escalade, you know, that I've been in a few times, I don't think that had any more room than a Cayenne, to be honest. I feel like
massive, isn't it?
Feels massive at the front, but the back seats kind of, I felt compromised. I don't know, I still feel it's compromised, those cars. I don't know where all the space goes, but they feel a bit compromised. I could be wrong, but that was just my first impressions of being in that car.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but he said SUV, so I thought that was interesting. But we'll get into that, Steve. We'll get into the Duck and Whale event shortly. I just want to go back to the episode before we had a week's break. You mentioned to me Steve had a recommendation, which he thought of on the spot because he wasn't prepared. He came up with the the IK Foam Pro 2 sprayer. Someone asked me what it was called the other day. It was the IK Foam Pro 2 sprayer, foam lance, I guess they call it. Now, Steve recommended that. I trusted Steve's opinion and I bought it online straight away.
And now you hate it?
It arrived. I haven't actually used it. I have a weird setup here in my building. As you know, there's a car wash bay and people tend to park in it. So someone actually was parked in there the other day on Saturday when I wanted to wash my car, and I can only get in one side of the car wash bay because of the way that it's situated. If I go on the other side, it'll just break my car in two. My car just bends in the middle.
It's a massive speed hump on that.
Yeah, it's a massive hump, which is ridiculous.
Yep. Yep.
So I couldn't wash my car, so I couldn't do it. So I just had to do a quick, what do they call it? Spit and lick. I did a quick spit and lick. I think my dad used to say that, a spit and lick or whatever it is.
You licked your car?
I did a quick.
Maybe that's why you're not feeling so well.
No, because on the Saturday, I drove up to the Central Coast to see my family. And then it was raining, of course. It wasn't supposed to rain. It rained a bit, and then I had like a bit of spray on it. So I thought, I'm sure everyone's got fully waxed and clean cars at the Duck and Whale event, so I better just try and clean my car up a little bit. So
I didn't even notice. Was everyone's car spotless there?
Yeah, pretty spotless.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it looked like it was a waxing day on Saturday. Everyone had been out there. Also, whatever they do, foaming, waxing, whatever you do these days.
Licking.
Licking. I did spit and lick. So I couldn't wash it. Yeah, back to the IK Foam Pro 2, which is what the point is. If anyone's thinking, if anyone doesn't have the situation like what Steve said, Steve uses it at his parents' house if he just wants to wash the car. I haven't used it, but I put the Adams. I got the Adams stuff when it was on special, Steve. The Adams foam, whatever it is, that American brand. I also bought
a car wash.
Yeah, I also bought a mint one as well.
Yep.
And I put that in there. I don't know what the breakup should have been. I just kind of looked at things on YouTube and just took a guess.
I was going to say, just look up a few YouTube things, and they're pretty reasonable, I think.
Turned it upside down. I tried it on the wall downstairs, on the concrete wall. Wasted some very expensive snow foam. But it seems to, it actually does seem to work pretty well. It seems to work pretty well. I think it's going to be good.
For a manual thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for a manual thing, I think it's good. Now, even if it's not good enough to use on the whole, I think it's great for the wheels. I think it'll be great for the wheels, to spray in the wheels. And does it work well?
I'm pretty certain that you'll be able to kind of do your entire car. Like you do need to work out how much detergent and the ratio between detergent and water. But like I said last time, I've done it on the whole Macan, wheels and body, and that's a bigger car than yours, and it was perfectly kind of fine. It depends on how kind of foamy you want to get the thing. Like obviously out of a pressure washer on a proper kind of lance, like I can like really kind of, but it looks like my car's literally been snowed on.
Yeah.
You probably won't quite get that out of that IK2 thing, but it's not bad.
It's not bad for the money and for the size of it. I think they've done a good job on it. They give you 3 little nozzle things, 3 different colored things that go inside. It's not actually in the outside, they go inside. Messing with that? I just left the grey one on. The grey one is the middle, in between. Yeah. I guess I'll just try it with that.
I didn't swap anything over either.
Yeah, I'll try it with that. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I did buy it and I had all good intentions of using it on Saturday evening to wash my car, but I couldn't. But I will use it during the week one day and I'll update everyone next week if it actually worked. But I think it's a pretty good product for the price. It's like $70 Australian or something, or 62 on sale. So it's pretty cheap.
Curious to see like if you start doing that, whether your kind of washing process takes longer now too, because everyone was sort of not taking the piss. I don't care even if they were, but wondering how come it took me so long to wash my car. This is sort of post ceramic coating kind of thing, but that's one of the steps in it. Like once you kind of start foaming, how much longer it's going to take you to wash your car.
Yeah, there's a few people out there who are taking the piss at the moment in our Australian slang, but I'm not going to get into that, but we'll just leave it there. Steve, yeah. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to address it.
I'm one of them, so
I'm not even going to address it. Hey, Patreon, let's get into Patreon because we've had some extra support this week since we've been gone. 2 new members of Patreon. Patreon is where you can support the podcast. It's patreon.com/PorscheCooled. You do that or just search PorscheCooled Patreon on Google. It'll come up straight away. 2 new members, Steve. Evan, thanks for joining. Evan sent me a couple of messages. I'm going to get him on an owner's story in the future. He has a very rare car, actually. I'm going to mention the car because he sent me a message on Patreon. He has a Vesuvio Metallic 1999 Carrera 4, Steve. Do you like Vesuvio Metallic?
So a bit hit and miss. It was really, that was launched on that 993 S, wasn't it?
It was a 993. I couldn't remember which one. Yeah.
And it had that sort of grey mirrors and like wheels, which is what I ripped off on my 993. That's the wheel.
Oh, right.
The wheel code I sort of lifted for my car. So it's actually quite a nice color. It's sort of like it's purple, but it's not sort of super vibrant like 991 RS purple. It's like a lot more mauvey, grey kind of tones.
Yeah, it's got deep. It sort of changes, doesn't it? It's one of those weird colors that changes. I like it. I like the color. I saw a back to Cayennes because we like talking SUVs. There's a Cayenne for sale in Australia, and I think it's still there. And it looks like it's a very similar color to that Vesuvio Metallic. It's like a purple color. You've got to check it out. I think if you get a car like it's a Cayenne. If you get a Cayenne, you have to get them in those weird colors. That's why I'm a big fan.
Does it look like Grimace?
Big fan of the Miami blue in the Macan.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Hate it.
Anyway, Evan, thank you so much for joining PorscheCooled on PorscheCooled on Patreon. Then there's Matt. Matt, thank you again. Thank you for joining. We have chatted as well.
Okay, Matt.
Matt's on the search. He's on the search for a GT3 RS 991.1, I think, from memory, or a 991.2 GT3. I think he's in Australia, actually. Matt's in Australia, in Queensland.
Oh, cool.
So I think he was getting a PPI on one the other day. I'm not sure what happened, but he's looking for that. So I don't think he can lose.
Was it a 0.1?
Yeah, 0.1 GT3 RS, which you know is my favorite, and also a 0.2 GT3, which is also one of my favorites. I have a few favorites. I don't hesitate in saying it, but they are on my favorites list. Yep. I think either of those would be good, Steve. Either of those.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
That's for sure. Let's just get into. Let me just mention owner stories very quickly, and then we'll get into the main our main topic this week, or our main chat.
Hang on. Owner stories. You're not going to give it away, right?
This week, I'm not going to give it away. And I can explain it. Well, we've got a good one this week, actually. We've got another transaxle one, which is why we're going to talk about V8s and 928s a little bit in this episode as well, Steve, very briefly. But number 70 of the owner stories series, can you believe it? Number 70. I can't believe I've done 70 owner stories. Wow. I've done more now because I've recorded them in advance.
Yep.
But we've got Witty 924. Witty's real name is Al. Hi, Al. But he's known as Witty924 on all his social channels. Witty has a podcast as well. He has a YouTube channel. I probably shouldn't have said this because now you won't want to listen to the podcast, but go and have a look at Witty's YouTube channel, Witty924. He goes through his project, his 924 project. He used to work in the motor industry. He's in the UK. He's in Hampshire in the UK. And he loves the story of the 924. Now, I'm not going to give it away, Steve, but he did actually say a few things in the podcast that I didn't know about the 924. And I don't know much about transaxles, you know what I mean? We're not really transaxle experts, are we?
Far from it. I have no idea because we've never looked into it, never driven one.
But Witty, but if you have a look at Witty's channel after we finish recording, it's he's got quite a few good videos, and he goes through sort of technical side of it. He started his channel, his project is his 924. It's a 1984. It's in a beautiful blue. I can't remember the color off the top of my head. Sorry, Witty. It's a beautiful color. It's a 2-liter, the first classic front engineered transaxle car that Porsche launched in 1975. His is an 84, I think. 84 Porsche 924. God, I hope I got that right. Sorry if I haven't. 84 Porsche 924. Yeah, it is 84. And he's also got, Steve, a 996 Turbo S, which has the X50, power package,
cool.
Which is very, very cool. Very, very cool. So he's got two Porsches. It's a really good owner's stories. Witty is really good behind the mic because he does, podcasts, and he also does YouTube. So it was a really good conversation. We had a really good chat. So that's coming up. That would have been live this week because we're recording this, Steve and I. Just for the record, Steve and I are recording this on a Monday. So we're recording it quite early for the Friday's episode. But PorscheCooled Owner Stories is number 70 this week. So if you haven't listened to it already, go and give it a listen on Apple. Everywhere else, every podcast host has it. Steve, I'm not going to ask you if you listened to it because I haven't even edited it yet, so you would have listened to it. That's my job this afternoon, to edit the podcast. Have you got a recommendation or not?
No.
No? Okay, that's okay.
Can I scramble? I don't think I can this week.
I'll talk about mine because mine's a book again. I don't think I mentioned, I really hope I didn't mention this in last week's episode. I don't think so. I had a message from Todd at Stone City Outlaw. Hi, Todd. Todd's been on Owner Stories before. Todd's got the 356A. 356A, which is very close in numbers to PJ in the UK, who's also got a 356A. Both been on Owner Stories, both recommended if you haven't listened to those Owner Stories too. They're really, really good. The recommendation, Todd sent me an image of 2 books, Steve, by Dr. B. Johnson. Have you heard of Dr. B. Johnson?
Nope.
Dr. B. Johnson, Brett, I think his name is. There's one on the 911 and 912, and there's one on the 356. And they're called the 911 and 912 Porsche, A Restorer's Guide to Authenticity.
You posted this.
Volume 2.
Instagram, right?
Yeah, Volume 2. And then there's the 356 one, Restorer's Guide to Authenticity, Volume 4.
Yep.
I think on the back it says they're originally printed in 1998. Obviously, they've been updated. They're a really comprehensive book. I bought the 911, 912 one. And why did I buy it? I always buy books that I like, Steve, even if I may not use them now. I may use them in the future.
You know what I mean?
Like, I'm not restoring a 911 and 912, right? It's pretty obvious I'm not restoring a 911 or 912. But everyone knows that I really like the 911T and I really like the 912. And nothing is ruled out in my books, you know what I mean? Nothing is ruled out. And this book has all those details and nuances and that happen over time, with the interior and little features. And, you know, I'll show you the book when you come over. Like it's a really, you know, really, it's a good book. It's been well researched. You know what I mean? And Todd said for the 356, he said he's, you know, found things he didn't know about and things he had to find out about. It's in the book. So I think, obviously if you're restoring a 911 or a 912 or a 356, it's probably like a really good resource. And I'm sure there's other books out there as well. But Todd recommended this, and it's a great recommendation. And I bought the 911, 912 one. I didn't buy the 356 one because I don't think I'll ever own a 356. But I hope to own an early long hood 911T or 912 crypto. Don't talk about crypto. Anyone who invests in crypto will be very sad this morning.
Is it tanked?
Yeah. Russia.
I'm not into it, so I don't know.
Because of the war and whatever, you know.
Right.
Macroeconomic factors that, you know, do stupid things to finance. Yeah.
Maybe that's part of his master plan. Tank the global economy. Probably. Who knows? A psychopath.
Who knows?
I've got a recommendation.
We have quite a few Russian listeners, Steve. So, you know, don't say anything.
Be careful. Bad. I can't help myself, mate. I'm grumpy.
What's your recommendation?
I'm both the grumpy men on the balcony. Type 7 sticker. I just remembered that mine came in the mail finally.
Oh, you ordered it?
Yeah.
I destroyed mine.
Oh, you stuck yours on the inside, outside? We had
inside,
this
underneath the tint, and you couldn't see it. And I got it on so straight and so perfect. It looked beautiful on the inside, and then I went outside the car and I couldn't see it. That was when I first got back from overseas, still jet lagged.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that I was a little bit cynical, as I am, about Type 7, which is basically backed by Porsche. You can sort of, like, from a marketing exercise point of view, you can tell it's their way of trying to kind of weasel their way into sort of more like the younger, slightly design, aesthetic, culturally oriented kind of crowd. But I must admit, like, some of the content that they post, I actually do kind of quite like, because I do actually like some of the design stuff and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's like every fourth post is car oriented. Like, it is a Porsche channel, and you can log onto their website and just sort of sign up and get, they'll send you a free sticker. And I guess the value exchange is that you're giving them your details because they're obviously capturing your data. But in return, you get a sticker, which is, you know, I probably will never stick it on my car, but I don't know why I did it.
Well, the thing is, it's free, and they post it to you.
Sorry,
free.
I should have said that.
It's a free gift, right? And, you know, obviously Type 7 is owned by Porsche, right? It's done by Ted Gushue, who used to do work for Petrolicious.
Yep.
I'm guessing most people that listen know what Type 7 is, I'm guessing. But I quite like their Instagram because it's a mishmash of like their own posts where they've got photos taken around the world, and then it's reposts, and then it's obviously they do some repost some Porsche posts, or they do things from Porsche. I think it's well done. It's a lifestyle thing, isn't it? It's a whole, it encompasses everything that you sort of enjoy and things that the similarities that we have in taste.
I just can't help put my kind of lens of cynicism, because I know that it is a marketing kind of, that's the future of marketing, rather than kind of running a 30-second TV spot on TV, which nobody watches anymore or whatever.
Does anyone watch TV anymore?
I don't know. I can't remember the last time I watched free-to-air TV.
Free-to-air TV, I mean, we obviously watch streaming on TV and YouTube on TV and Netflix and all those things on TV, but you don't watch TV, really. So
this is like it's smart marketing from Porsche as opposed to some of the other kind of crap that they do. So
yeah. Hey, I sent you we'll come back to the reviews, but I sent you that link. In Australia, there's a new, I mentioned it once before, I think. There's a site called chrometemple.com. It's an Australian company, chrometemple.com. I want to talk about that other company as well that you sent me for the cars and coffee that you sent me, I saw yesterday on the WhatsApp as well. Because that's a new company too. chrometemple.com. I don't know. I think they do storage. They sell, but they had a car on there, and I just sent it to Steve before. It's a 1988 Porsche 911 3.2 Carrera 2.7 RS backdate. It's in silver. I quite like it. I think it looks pretty cool. And I thought it looked familiar, Steve, because when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, Miff, Miff, who I talked to a lot about Porsches, who gave me a lift back from Waterhouse on the very first day I came back. I just happened to run into him, who's a Patreon member. I sent it to Miff because I thought it looked like his car, and he said it was actually. He knew that car, and it was like his orange RS. I think his RS had a different engine to this one in it. What do you think of that car? Did you like it? Did you click on the link? It's cool, right?
Yeah, I did. It's cool. I'd seen it before because I came across Chrome Temple and that 964 that they'd previously sold, which I quite enjoy the interior on that. I remember I sent you the gear knob for that, which was very very bespoke. But yeah, this sort of backdate thing looks pretty cool.
Yeah, so the listeners should just go and have a look at chrometemple.com, have a look at this car.
What is it, a 993 engine?
No. I think from memory, I think Miff said his car had a 993 engine in it. This has got a...
no, it doesn't.
No, I don't think it has. I think it's the 3.2. They kept the 3.2 Carrera engine.
Okay.
But it's done by
Zag.
Yeah, it's done by Zag Automotive in Sydney. I don't know a lot about Zag, but they've been around for a long time, I think from the early 2000s or something like that. But I don't know a lot about them. A long time, yeah. And I think they had donor cars, and then they did these backdates. But that one's, it's 200, just so, for the listeners go to the site if they're wondering how much it is, it's 279,000 Australian dollars. Is it worth that? I'm not sure, but it looks pretty cool, that's for sure. I just like to mention certain cars that come up. There was one other car I wanted to ask you about too, and I'm sure you've probably seen it, the one at Autohouse, the Turbo.
Which one's that?
The white one. There's a white 997 Turbo at Autohouse Hamilton. Manual Autohouse, and it's some exclusive. It's got like the exclusive manufacturer, like some old badging on it that someone's had it specced out. Have you seen it? It's in white. It's got white painted back seats. I think it's got white calipers. It's got white paint on the inside of the doors.
I'm just jumping on there now. I did see it, but I want to.
I think it's about 300,000, around about 300K. It's
300. Yep.
Have you seen it?
It's 900.
I mean, it's got the painted back seats. Like someone's gone to town on the options. I'm guessing they had some kind of relationship to get that exclusive sort of thing happening in 2000 and what is it? A 2007 model? It's a 997.1, right?
Yep. I've never seen that triple tailpipe detail as well.
Yeah, the tailpipe is so unusual. Yeah.
Yeah. I never liked the double sort of overlapped one, but the triple one's like way over the top.
Yeah, so the double one, explain that tailpipe, Steve.
They sort of intersect, like the kind of classic, current day sort of tailpipe, or when you've got twin tailpipes. But it was 996 Turbo, I think, was the first time that they kind of made them intersect. But this one's got three that kind of overlap across each other, which just looks kind of
I think
wacky.
It looks odd. I think it's looked odd. I don't understand the little bit of white inside the door either on that little piece that you can get done in leather. There's like that little piece painted white, which looks a little bit strange too. Just near the door handle. Did you see that?
Yep.
I mean, the painted back seats, I quite like the seats when they're painted on the back. I think that looks kind of cool. But it's a special one. It's in white, like it's got white calipers, right? I wasn't dreaming. It's definitely got white calipers, which is very unusual. Very unusual. But it is a manual and it is a 997 Turbo, so it's pretty cool.
It'd be pretty rare, right? Well,
very rare.
Rare as in definitely hard to find a manual turbo.
What's the mileage, Steve?
Sorry, I'll just click
I think it's pretty low.
Where is it? 42,300
kilometers. Nothing. It's got nothing. It's a collector's car for sure. Everyone, okay, let's get on to the big Porsche news. Everyone knows about the cargo ship, right? The ship that went down. I mean, I keep seeing it. I keep seeing different. I saw some article and it referred to Matt Farah, like they actually referred to Matt Farah, which I thought was quite funny. I think that was
because his spiders on there?
In the Daily Mail, because apparently his spiders on there. Now, I just want to say one thing about this cargo ship down there. It's terrible, right? It's terrible that the crew had to, swim for their lives, so to speak. This cargo ship was on fire in the ocean. It's got all new Porsches. Apparently, it's got Bentleys on it. It's got Audis on it. And it's got Volkswagens on it, right?
The Volkswagen Group.
So it's, all Volkswagen Group. This is the problem when you can track everything. Go back 20 years, Steve. If you didn't have this, track your new car, you wouldn't know that the ship sunk. You wouldn't know that your car was on this ship. Wouldn't you feel better that the dealer just comes back to you and says, there's been a delay at the factory, your car's not coming for another 3 months? Instead of knowing, the car is like in the ocean burning and maybe we'll still get those cars to the US and then maybe we might just do a bit of a quick, clean detail on them and get them back to you so that we get the smell of the smoke out of the car,
Yeah. But did you see that thing about There's 991 GT2 RSs on it. So they were the very, very last of the production, and they're going to some high-profile Brazilian customers, etc. So they're going to reopen the line and rebuild them for it. It's like,
really?
Wow. Okay, they can do that, yeah.
Oh, so this was the very last production. Yeah, 901. So it's the very last, the last few cars.
GT2 RS, yeah.
Oh.
So they were on that ship, and they've already sent them letters, and they've gone back and said, no, it's cool. Like, we'll get the production line going again, and we'll build your car again.
I didn't actually hear that update. So the cars on the ship are lost, are they? They're definitely lost for good.
I only saw when they just everybody reported this ship was on fire and basically sank. So yeah, the cars. I'm pretty sure that even a little bit of water in it, I don't think you want that thing anymore.
I mean, that's how long is it going to take Porsche to catch up with that production? Because there would have been new GT3s. Obviously, Matt Farah's Spider was on it. He said,
Is it? Yeah.
I don't know how long. You'll be waiting months now. Months.
The sort of funny little thing about that, or the funny little anecdote that'll kind of come out of that, is that you'll be able to get, what is it, like a 2022 991 GT2 RS, even though it should have pretty much been finished, right? Like you'll get a year model 2022. So how rare, supposedly will that car be?
Right. So then they've got even something that's rarer than before.
Yeah, it'll be there'll be a handful of those, I'm assuming.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, that was the big news in the week. That was on every newspaper, no matter what country you're in, you do a search for it. I think it even came up on Bahrain newspaper as well. It's on everything. It's something very important. Hey, where are we, Steve? I haven't mentioned the Apple ratings and reviews. We're kind of catching up this week because we skipped last week. So there's 3. Let me read them. While you have a drink of water. The first one is, and why I read out the Apple reviews is because I really appreciate, and Steve and I really appreciate how people take the time to give us a review on Apple. Giving us a review on Apple just gets us noticed, just gets other people seeing the podcast that haven't seen it before. I've had a lot of messages from people who are only just discovering the podcast in November or December and are making the way through the archive, Steve. There's a lot to listen to because there's 170 odd episodes now. But it's great how people are still finding the podcast. We still haven't even saturated the market. So that's good to know.
I apologize for my monotone voice.
You only have to apologize to one person for that.
A what?
Okay. 3 Apple reviews since last episode. They're good ones. The first one is Real Porsche Fans Talk Porsche for Real People. I'm going to steal some of these for titles of the podcast, by the way. I think some of these headings are quite good. Michael and Steve are true enthusiasts. Please note that, other podcasts. Michael and Steve are true enthusiasts. They know what they know and are not afraid to show what they don't. Their expertise is clearly in the water-cooled generation, true, but they understand the connection to the history of the marque. The only thing better than the enthusiasm for modifying their cars is the fact that they are real people, not celebrity clowns who are more interested in talking about how rich they are, rudely talking over their guests and pushing their political agenda. Thank you so much for that review. And I kind of agree with the last bit of the review because it's kind of what I'm feeling at the moment when I listen to some other people's podcasts where it's a little bit, it's changed a little bit, and I'm not sure why they've changed it because it was good before. You know what I mean? And that's from ZZ245810369112, United States of America. So thank you very, very much for that. Steve, any comments?
No, it's very kind.
That's very kind. Next one. Perfect podcast for Porsche owners and fans. I found the PorscheCooled in November 2021 and have made my way through the full back catalogue of podcasts over the last 3 months. To say that this is a must listen is an understatement. If you are a current Porsche owner or hope to be one in the future, the knowledge you can glean from Michael's conversations with Steve and all the other owner stories guests are absolutely invaluable. Part of the Porsche ownership experience is talking and learning about our cars. Exactly. Every episode is like a conversation with friends at a car meet or show. Now that I've caught up the most recent recorded podcast, I can't wait for the next episode to come out. And that's from Evan. And Evan is the same Evan that's member of Patreon that I read out before, who's got the 996 in Vesuvio Metallic. Is that the color? Vesuvio Metallic.
Kind of Evan.
So that's Edge Crusher 29 at USA. Thank you, Evan. What else? Is there one more? Oh, there's one more. Sorry, Steve. Must listen for Porsche enthusiasts, and we know who this is. PorscheCooled is a must listen for all the Porsche enthusiasts. Every episode, I walk away learning something new. Whether you own $1 million museum cars, just bought a used Boxster or a Cayenne for $5,000, or are just starting to think about buying your first Porsche, PorscheCooled will be a fun, pertinent, and informative listen. Michael and Steve are great hosts who are in the tune to the auto and Porsche communities around the world. It helps that both have Aussie accents and are calming voices. I think Steve's got a stronger Aussie accent than me, though.
Do I? Oh well, you'll never catch me doing voice.
That's from Josh, who's been on. That's from Josh, who's been on Owner Stories before from the US. So thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
What else? We've sort of talked about the cars. Have you seen anything interesting during the week, Steve? You asked me a question? We haven't got to the duck and whale thing. We probably should get to the duck and whale thing because we're getting on time. Do you want to talk about the 992 Carrera spec? Maybe we'll pass on that and come back to that another time.
Yeah, talk about another time. It's cool. I didn't really know much about it.
Yep. So on Sunday here in Sydney, there was one of the first. They didn't call it Cars and Coffee. They called it Duck and Whale Car Meet. And there was coffee there, of course, if you could get through the queue. And it was a Clontarf Reserve here in Sydney. There was plenty of space. I got there at about, 6:45 or something. It started at 7. It was going 7 to 8.
Well, you that early. I was only late. Well,
I got there at quarter. Yeah, Steve got there late, but at 6:45, Steve, the car park was still pretty much full. I didn't really know my way there because I'm not really big on directions to the Northern Beaches areas. So I had my Waze on. And then all of a sudden I look behind my mirror and all of a sudden there's like 2 356s coming up behind me and then there's a white Speedster and it's like, okay.
Just follow them. It's pretty obvious.
Not to feel intimidated in my poor old little 997 base Carrera, but you kind of feel a little bit intimidated, a little bit like you're not really up to speed. So anyway, I just followed them and we went to there and then Steve and Marco turned up. When I parked my car, I met Stephen, who's been on Owner Stories before. Stephen, who's got the 66 912 being built. Everyone knows Stephen and his 996 cab. Steve. Yep. So I met Stephen. I didn't
realise who it was when I think you introed him to myself and Marco. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, so I met Stephen. Stephen came up to me when I first parked, so it was good to meet up with Stephen, have a chat. It's a bit distracting. It's very hard to talk at these things because there's so much going on that was so busy and there's so many cars, like cars are driving in, Steve, and you're looking and, you're just like, it's really hard to keep a conversation with someone because someone interrupts or you see a car and then you stop talking or you change topics. And it's like exciting. It's the excitement of the time, I think. Also met Paul
I'll
as well.
apologise to anyone that sort of tried to come up to me and talk to me. Well, not that there were that many, but like I know you were kind of introing me to a couple of people. And I knew this beforehand, but the God's honest truth is like I hadn't, since COVID or well before COVID, since I moved to where I'm living right now, I have not been around that many people before in any sort of social setting. And I had zero social skills before that, but they've kind of disintegrated during COVID times as well. So I just found the whole thing so overwhelming. Like I can barely remember some of the cars. I don't think I really looked at some of the cars the way that I probably would want to kind of just, walk up and ogle it and all of that sort of stuff. Just felt like a massive kind of blur.
It was busy.
Yeah, it was really busy.
Like I said, I got there about 6:45. I met Stephen as soon as I got there. Then Marco and Steve rocked up a little bit later. They managed to get a park reasonably close with Steve's uncle. So that was good. And but the cars there, were pretty amazing. I parked my car, and I actually got a really good image from Paul, who we met for the first time. Paul, who has the 3 Porsches, who I've mentioned on the podcast before, from Sydney. Hi, Paul. And where am I at, Steve? I've lost my train of thought. So Paul had his GT3. We had a look at that. His 996 GT3 0.2 Atlas grey, really really nice. There was a few GT3s. Isn't it Atlas?
Was that Atlas? I thought it was black. See,
no, it's Atlas.
But don't ask me. Is it? Yeah,
no, it's Atlas grey. It's not black.
The whole thing was in blur. Okay.
That's what I was saying to you when we're standing near the car. It's Atlas grey. It's quite a rare colour because there's not many in Atlas grey and 0.2s. Hardly any.
Oh, I didn't realise. Yeah, it's one of the cars that I did manage to kind of walk up to and just sort of have a look at. I was in such a daze, as you know, that I clocked that as a black car, not a grey one. I'm really,
every time I see and maybe I'm talking about top end here, but I think it's just through the line. I'm really impressed when I see 996s because I never thought, it's not that I never thought, because I know my wife's boss's ex-car, his Carrera 4. I always thought that was nice inside, and I've said that before. But you see images of 996s online, and I guess 997s as well, Steve, and they never look that great. You know, in the GT3, sometimes when you see the images, you look at them and go, the seats
they don't photograph well.
They don't photograph well. And then, Paul's GT3 is a really good example. You know, it's a really classic example. And the interior is
nicely
beautiful.
Kept. Really
nicely kept. And as is Marco's interior, when you see Marco's turbo interior, you know, it's in great condition. It's got the details, you know. I noticed Paul's seats had the Alcantara in the center. I meant to ask Paul about that. I will ask him later on. I thought that the seats in the 996 GT3 come in either the fire retardant fabric or they come in leather with Alcantara inserts, do they?
I don't know enough about it. I can't remember.
Because the one at Autohouse, and I think the one that James at Porsche Plus is selling, I think that comes with the fire retardant fabric, right? I think. Am I getting confused?
Generally, the buckets. Yeah, generally like a club sport. Like I know this with the 997 GT3. If you ordered the club sport package and you got the lightweight buckets, it would be in Perlon, in the fire retardant thing. I'm assuming that you could probably spec the auto with leather. So I don't really know when the leather Alcantara kind of thing kind of came in.
It's a nice GT3 though. I mean, I have to say I really would like to see, I'd like to see Paul's 996.2 GT3, Steve, your 997.1 GT3 and Marco's Turbo S together on a drive and take a photo of it. I think that'd be a great shot with those three. You know what I mean? The colors and everything. Along. It'd be a great shot, don't you think?
Yeah, Paul's up for it. Ask him to kind of come along to a drive. Like his car was in really nice condition, and you're right. Like I was very surprised when I first hopped into Marco's car because I'll be honest, I never really liked the design of like a 996 interior. It's one of the things that I disliked the most about it, like more so than the interior. But when you hop into Marco's car, you don't really. I never really sort of saw it like that. It's like, ooh, I never thought, oh, yuck, I can't live with this. It was just more like, oh, it's nowhere near as bad as I thought that it would be.
Yeah.
But I guess a well-kept car, like, because, there was a car next to Paul's GT3. Sorry if I'm rubbishing somebody's car that's listening to this, but...
What car was it?
It was a 996, and I remember I sort of said to you, look at the difference in the condition of the plastics.
Oh, yes.
And that's like my sort of like horrible kind of perception of like 996 interiors, or like where the plastic goes all.
That's right.
Looks a little bit sort of cheap sort of thing, but Paul's car doesn't kind of come across like that at all, and nor does Marco's.
Yeah. What I was saying before is that Paul sent me an image last night. He took a photo of my car, and I parked next to, I always seem to park next to cars that, people are just going to look over your car, I parked next to that. I think it was a long hood, wasn't it? Some older air-cooled. It was grey, and I think it had orange stripes. Like, I have to look at the photo. I can't even remember now.
With the orange S in the Porsche.
Yeah, sort of, and that guy parked before me, so he parked, and then there was another, next to me on the other side was a 996 in that unique grey, another one of those unusual silvers, and I parked in the middle. I didn't realize at the time, I didn't even take a photo of myself, but Paul sent a photo, and it's actually quite a good photo because it's like these three shades of grey. Like you see the air-cooled, you see the 997, and you see my 996. And it's actually a really good photo because I think I joked to Marco, I said, I always find the best place to spot, no one's going to look at my car. And then, we looked over at Marco's car and people are already looking at the turbo. The turbo like draws people in, that speed yellow. People just want to look at it. And,
so bright. Yeah.
And I kind of feel a bit like this. And I know Marco said, my car stands up in our chat that we have. But it's like, I kind of feel like this sometimes, and it's hard not to because there's so many outlaws, there's so many hot rods, there's so many, this meet, just so the listeners know, Steve, there was a 911R there with the red stripe, white with the red. There's the GT3 70 years Porsche Australian edition, who I met the owner of that car. Stephen introduced me to the owner of that car. And I have to say,
the car was nicer in real life than I thought, I'm going to say. Like the color and all that sort of stuff. Even the tartan, which I'm not a tartan fan, but even that looked better than I sort of thought that it would. I always like the blue interior thing, but the way the kind of car comes together looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think this is the problem with relying on Instagram and relying on social to make decisions. If you don't see it in real life, you can't experience the width of it. You can't experience the dimensions of it. You can't experience anything. And like Steve said, the color. There's a couple of things that we were surprised that day, right? And we're going to get into the GT3 the other GT3 as well, the Wing GT3. But this 911, this is the 911 GT3 70 years Porsche Australian edition, right? And it's got the tartan seats. And I've never been, and I've said it before, I haven't been a fan of the tartan seats. It looks completely different in real life. It's a blue type leather. It's like it's blue, isn't it? The leather, like a bluey grey colored leather. Yeah. And it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful color, Steve. And then the tartan is what Steve said. It's much darker. It always comes across as this really washed out, men's check shirt sort of fabric, but it's not. And then you see the color of the fish blue. The fish blue is one of those amazing Porsche colors which just changes so much in the light. Like I went past there again and had another look at it when it was locked up. And it's a great color. And the wheels complement it. I like the wheels. I think the only thing I will say, which I still don't like, I'm not a big fan on those custom sills, and I still think the sills where they put the Australian edition thing on it and that little badge on the side, I'm still not a fan of that. But the car itself...
The badge is terrible.
The badge is terrible.
I was joking with Marco, and it's like it looks like one of those things that you buy from Bunnings and stick on your letterbox. Like just the quality of that badge is so not befitting the car.
It isn't. It should be better. You can almost see the guy in the Porsche factory with the double-sided tape on the back just sticking it on. You know what I mean? It's just stuck onto that side sill. So that was a real highlight. It was really good to see that car. I'm really glad that Stephen's friend brought it along, and Stephen took me over there and introduced me as well, because this guy's got this gentleman has quite a few cars, I think. So then there was the 992 GT3. There was quite a few GT3s there. I was actually quite surprised how many GT3s and GT2 and GT3 RSs were there. But the GT3 in Shark Blue, now that's the first one I've seen. I haven't seen one in real life before. I don't know if you have, Steve.
No, I have not.
I like the shape. The wing looks good in real life. I always hated the Shark Blue to the point where I was joking about it on so many episodes. I think I was wrong. I think the Shark Blue is actually okay. I think it looks to me, and I know Marco's like shaking his head when he's listening because he liked it and now he's saying he doesn't. I think it looks like a heritage color. It has something about it that looks like a heritage color. Now, I don't know what they've based it on, Steve. I wouldn't buy it, but I don't hate it. What did you think?
Yeah, it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought that it was going to be. I didn't like it in all the kind of like when they launched the car and all that sort of stuff as the hero color. In real life, it doesn't look as bad as I thought that it would, but it sort of, to me, kind of pales in comparison to, Riviera or Miami Blue and stuff like that. Like Riviera and Miami, etc., feel more distinctive and that sort of tone of blue. Look, this is all very subjective. It's like,
of course,
we're discussing like whether you like a blue or not kind of thing. What I still maintain I really don't like about the pure aesthetic of that car is the black plastic at the front. The sort of lower air intake in like that big slab of black plastic just looks a little bit cheap to me, kind of thing. And I'm not really a big fan of the nostrils as well. But
I don't mind the nostrils. I think the nostrils look better in real life. I think the plastic is purposeful though, right? It's meant to be a track car, right? It's meant so that it doesn't chip or whatever in those areas, isn't it? I mean, the touring they paint, so you can get the touring, it's painted. But
yeah, it looks better kind of body colored. I think just I sort of said it before, like there's a thing at the moment where Porsche are sort of it feels like they're making a design element out of black plastic, and I still just look at it and go, oh, it's a little bit nasty, isn't it? Like
it was good to see.
Even if it was like gloss black, or it feels like it should be something other than just horrible cheap black plastic, like whether it's carbon or gloss black or a satin black or like in old Audi days they would have painted that like a metallic grey.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look kind of finished.
I guess I don't hate it as much as you. But when I looked at the touring, obviously the GT3 70 years Porsche, which is a touring, right? You look at that and it's painted, and it's like it looks
better.
It looks better,
yeah.
But I don't hate the GT3 plastic. I kind of sort of see what Porsche were doing, but to me the GT3 touring and that part does actually look better. But it wouldn't turn me off buying the car. It wouldn't stop me from buying that GT3. Not that I have that money, but it wouldn't stop me.
I'm saying all this shit, but like, would I be complaining if I had like any of these cars? Like, no way. I'd be a very happy camper.
So what else do we see? Exactly. So what else? So the other car we saw, and this was one of the 356s, and when I was driving there and the 356s were coming up behind, one of them was John, your friend from Pro Stitch, who had his 356 there with a 911 engine, right? It had a 911 engine in the boot.
I don't know what engine is in there. I know he literally just said to me, because I didn't realize that was his car. It's funny.
I think it had his 911 engine. I think Marco said that.
We were just looking at it. Yeah, Marco would know better than I would, because I didn't actually look under the I didn't look out the back kind of thing. But we were sort of ogling the interior, and Marco was sort of saying how nicely done it was. And then I bumped into John. This is John from Pro Stitch, and he said that was his car. I was like, oh, okay. We were just sort of chatting about it. I knew he had one, but I'd never seen it because I've only ever sort of seen his cars in his shop. But it's beautifully done. Such a nice car.
Done. It's got the red detail on the front. It's got the red sort of tartan interior. Like, interior is beautiful. I'm pretty sure Marco said it's a 911 engine in the rear. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. I'll correct it next week if I was wrong. But that was a really was a really nice car. You should ask him. Yeah. I mean, other standouts, and I didn't realize. And was he? I'm not sure if he the 930 Martini one that was parked a couple of cars down.
Was that Alex Holland's car?
Well, that's the one that's on, the one on Alex Holland website. Once you said that, I had a look, but you can't click on it, so it's not for sale. So is that from Alex Holland?
He's had that for a while. Yeah, last time when I went, like when I met him,
so he was there, was he?
His GT3, I guess so. If that was his car, yeah. Like I know he turns up to kind of cars and coffees and stuff. Like he's a interesting kind of dude, and I know he's sort of active in sort of all these sorts of types of events and everything.
It's very nice. That's the Magnus Walker, the famous one made famous by Magnus Walker, right? The Magnus Walker always talks about. Is that it? The 930 Martini.
Made famous by Martini.
Yeah, no, but he always
Magnus Walker.
Yeah, but Magnus Walker always makes that story about the car in Sheffield. Isn't that the 930 Martini? I'm pretty sure it is. That's the one.
I'm not a big Magnus fan, so I don't.
Yeah, I know, but there's a video on YouTube. But that was a nice looking car like that. The Duck and Whale Boxster was there. You can see some of these cars actually. Yeah, it was there. I had a good look at that. You didn't look at that? What's wrong with you?
I told you I was so kind of just, I don't know, like in a daze because people, cars, conversation, all that sort of stuff, bumped into a couple of people that I know as well. And by the end of it, it was just like, I just, so overwhelmed. It's like, oh man, I've got to get the fuck out of here. I can't cope with it.
The Duck and Whale Boxster was parked behind John at Pro Stitch's car on the other row.
Yeah, see, I didn't walk down that little bit.
So I did a quick video on PorscheCooled. I think Duck and Whale reposted it. There's a few of the cars there, so I walked around most of the area. I didn't get your or Marco's car. I didn't go down that row, Steve. I stopped.
Didn't miss much.
But I was just, when I was walking with my phone, I was actually doing an Instagram live, which is on PorscheCooled Instagram. You can actually have a look at it for the listeners. If they want to go and have a look, you'll see some of the cars there. So the Duck and Whale Boxster, I thought it looked pretty good. I like the two-tone sort of wheel thing. I would have liked to see it with like gold and black wheels, though, like a gold and a black wheel. But I understand the color combination that they've done. I think I still think it's a great project to do something like that. To take a chance and do something like that.
What was the interior like?
It's quite nice. Yeah, it's quite nice. The windows were closed. It was a bit hard to see, but it was quite nice.
Yep.
There was quite a lot, like I said, there was quite a lot of GT3 RSs there. There was a 964 Carrera 4 there in white that Steve was quite interested in. Tell the listeners why, Steve.
I was trying to work out whether it was my old car, whether that was my first 911. I'd been to I think you were there, like a Autohouse Cars and Coffee, where I came across it, and I could tell it was my car. I can't remember how. But a previous owner at some point in time figured out, got in touch with me. It probably was through Autohouse, and I did actually have a chat with somebody like quite a few years ago, as I have had with the 993 as well. But I was just trying to work out if that was my my first 964, and I think it may be, because it was white with a blue interior. I swapped the head unit out. It was on Cup 2s. It still had the flag mirrors, because a lot of people upgrade those to the teardrops, but I couldn't afford it at the time, even though I wanted to. So it seemed to kind of marry up with how I had it, but I don't know for sure.
We stood around it for a little while, didn't we? We were sort of standing there hoping that the owner would come back so you could actually ask him. If anyone's listening who knows who owns a 996 Carrera 4 in white that was there yesterday, 964. Maybe it's maybe it is Steve's old car. Maybe someone just sends me a message. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
White, blue interior. I think it was an Alpine head unit. It'll have a G pipe. I think it'll have a G pipe on it as well, and it has Bilstein. Can't remember which spec, but it's got Bilstein shocks on it as well.
Yeah, because Steve and I saw it way back in, must have been when I first got my car, so it must have been way back at an Autohouse Hamilton thing in 2017, and it was parked there. I remember you, and that day you thought it was your car as well. I don't know whether you knew for sure, but you thought it was your car that day too.
Yeah, just, and I don't know, just curious for kind of
it'd be interesting to know. What else was there, Steve? Was there, wasn't there a white 993 RS just near that car as well?
Yeah,
you said you see that quite often. That was quite nice too.
That car often goes out to the Porsche Club of New South Wales Concorde. You see that kind of car roll up there quite a lot.
It was good to see that. They're expensive, right?
Spider. What about that Spider? The white Spider with the dark red interior.
The joy of going, the joy of going to these car meets, these Cars and Coffee, is sometimes all the special cars. Like not the 70-year anniversaries, not the the Outlaw 356s or the fully restored 911T. Steve, is it? Sometimes it's just not the underdogs, but it's sometimes certain cars stand out. And that 718 Spider that we saw,
was it a 718 or was it a 981?
718, new one.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, you're making me doubt myself now. 718. No,
718. I didn't walk to the back of it. So
it was 718. So a new 718 Spider. It was in white. We always like white because it's a free color. And it had this.
Because I'm a tight ass.
It had because I never sort of thought about that car in white, because there's a 718 Spider for sale at that Paul sent me that's for sale in Porsche Sydney or Porsche Willoughby at the moment, where they want 250.
Silver one.
Yeah, the silver one with the silver wheels and the Boxster interior. Yep. So this white one had the Boxster interior. I haven't really stood next to one before. I think it's really resolved. The humps on the back. I think it's a really great Porsche. I think for anyone who's looking at only in Australia, not to say only, but only wanting to spend a couple of $100,000 on a new Porsche, right? Instead of what's crazy, isn't it? It's what 911s used to cost.
Yeah, that's insane.
But if anyone wants to spend, I think they're about 230 spec'd on the road, even if you get a couple of specs on this Spider. This one was beautiful. And Steve and I are chatting. Steve had his back to it. And then then this noise starts up. And Steve goes, "What's that?" I said, "That was the Spider." Remember, Steve? And it's like, the sound of it. And that wasn't a standard exhaust, I'm guessing, but it sounded amazing.
It sounds so good. And then by coincidence, I was walking back to the loo sort of later on in the morning, and the guy was leaving. So he literally turned it over as I was walking, in that direction. And he just started to kind of tootle out. So I just sort of said to him, "Hey, mate, that's not the standard exhaust, right?" And he said, "No, it's got the standard center muffler, but he's done something else to the rest of it. But it just sounds so good. Best compared to even and I know you're not sort of hearing it kind of driving, in third gear at 100K, down the freeway or whatever. But even compared to some of the idiots in the kind of RSs and stuff, who are kind of, revving it as they're kind of leaving the car park, which is really weird. I got to say, I don't know why you do that.
Oil's not up to temps. It didn't sound great. I wouldn't do that.
That Spider sounded so good, so much character.
Yeah, it did. And I have to say, I'm a fan. You know what I mean? I am a fan of it, and I have not just from seeing it that day, but I'm now definitely a fan after I've seen it. And I think white was one of those colors where I thought you wouldn't get it in white, but it had the white with the satin black wheels. And it had the Boxster red interior, the Boxster proper interior, the red and black. Actually, it's not red; it's like Bordeaux and black, right? And I thought
darker red, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that interior, that Bordeaux black interior on that package, it's beautiful. It really is. I think you'd have to get. Did that have lightweight buckets? I couldn't remember.
It had the GT2 style, the folding ones, the folding buckets.
It was a really nice looking Spider. I thought it's definitely a 718, wasn't it? It's definitely a 718.
I don't know. I only saw it from the front, and I'm not enough of a boffin to be able to pick the difference between.
If I was speccing that though, if anyone's out there who wants to buy a Boxster, I know there's, you can get that in shark blue, and I know there's a girl on Instagram, Arctic Mectra. She has the shark blue color in it, but I reckon I would get chalk crayon with this Boxster interior, because I saw a Targa, and I might have mentioned in a previous episode, Steve. I saw a Targa on Instagram. In cloud with the red and black interior. And I don't know what it is about crayon and red, but it really works well together. And I think that Bordeaux... I don't like red.
You saw a Macan in crayon as well that you liked.
Marco and I were talking about that. I saw in when Natasha's parents live here in Sydney, I saw a GTS going into the driveway of someone's house, and it was dirty. It was dirty, so maybe that was the reason. I saw it again yesterday, actually, driving back from there as well. And the crayon chalk in a Macan, and they were both GTSs, so I'm guessing it's the same car. I said to Marco that I didn't think that the Macan looked good in crayon after seeing that one, but then I followed the same car actually yesterday. I was following it out. I saw the same car, GTS. I don't mind it. I think the Australian Sun, because I've seen that color in UK, and I've seen it in Bahrain. The Australian Sun does something weird with the color where it can look a little bit cream in certain lights. It's not as grey, which I don't know if I like.
It's a brownie grey, yeah.
Yeah. But
there was that crayon touring yesterday, the 991.2 touring, which is cool as well. It's funny, I was going to say...
He looked really familiar, the gentleman that owned that car. I don't know if he listens to podcasts, but I saw that car and it was beautiful, and I saw him on the way back, and he looked very familiar, and I didn't get to talk to him, but that was a really nice touring, wasn't it, Steve?
Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool. It's funny when you go to something like this, though, because I was going to say, like, maybe you hinted at it a little bit before, and I bumped into my other mate who's got a identical car to mine, who he bought, in the last year, and I was sort of texting him afterwards, just sort of saying, "Oh, so what did you think?" But like when you go to a kind of event like that, and there's just so many kind of nice cars, like it's sort of like kid in a candy store, because there's just like so many kind of nice things to look at, whether you're into air-cooled or water-cooled, or you're into your kind of GT performance type things, or you're into your more kind of cruisy type things that have been modded a little bit, or whatever it is, or, mint 993s and stuff. Like pretty much everything was there. But how does it make you feel about your own car when you're kind of surrounded by like all of this kind of eye candy?
Yeah, no. I mean, as you said, you go there, you appreciate everything, right? But there's so much, and it's so much to take in, because you miss things. I walked past one car, and then I had to go back and look at it again, and it was that 911 964 Jubilee, right? Which are quite rare as well. There was a Jubilee parked near where
silver?
The silver one, near where the 356s were parked. There's one of those there, and I thought, oh, that's a Jubilee. Like, because you kind of miss things, like there's so much there. There was even a Ferrari 328 GTS there, which, really does look like a Cayman size, 981 Cayman size car, which is quite amazing. It's so small, and you always think of that car as being such a huge car.
Even that E46 BM, the M3, the blue one, is like, that's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was some BMs there. There was some other cars there. There was an old Merc. There was, there's a few other cars. Obviously, it's mainly Porsches, but I think the invitation was to whatever, just bring what you drive, what you like to drive.
What you like to drive, yeah.
Yeah, but you're right though, Steve. I don't know if we have enough time to get in it fully in this episode. Maybe we should continue that again next week and just follow on, don't you think? Because I think we can't really go into that too much this week. What do you think?
I can tell you just a little bit, like the quick conversation I was having with my mate, and it might kind of come out the wrong way. It might sort of sound, I don't know how it's going to sound, but I can genuinely say, like, after kind of going to that, I know I'm in a good spot, because I kind of go, oh, you know what? I really like that car. I'm quite car content. Like going to something like that when there's, like a whole bunch of very rare cars, or very, fast cars, or very unique cars, and all of that sort of stuff. Like I kind of come away with it and go, and my mate sort of said the same thing. It's like, oh, as much as I wouldn't be complaining about like any of the newer sort of GT3s or anything like that, or some of the really old kind of air-cooled things, I just sort of came away from it going, oh yeah, it's really cool to kind of see it all, but it compounds in my brain the fact that I quite like my car and I'm quite happy with it. And it's like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
It's a good spot to be.
It is, because both your and Marco's car are great cars, and I kind of had a little bit mixed feelings when I was there, and it kind of changed when I saw the image that Paul sent me, and it kind of when Marco sort of said, your my cars and my 997.1 Carrera holds up. And
Yeah,
I guess,
of course
I guess I can touch on this a bit, Steve, but it's like what I said to you before, like you and I talk every Friday, mostly every Friday. We're pretty much, over the last couple of years, we haven't really missed that many episodes. We've had a couple of weeks off here and there. So every week, we're gonna come across the same things all the time, because every episode, in essence, is like you and me having an owner's story every week, because that's what we're doing. We're just talking about our passion. We're just talking about things, and there's always a lot of cars. Well, for me, there's always a lot of cars in my head that are going around in circles, And, the whole thing about Porsche, and the thing I like about Porsche, and the thing I like about with owner stories is talking to people about the obstacles along the way, the things that just stop you from pushing the button, or stop you, or make you wait, or, make you think twice, or whatever. It could be property, you want to buy property, or it could be that you've got family, you've got kids, all the things, you know what I mean? Or it could be you don't have the garage space, as simple, or you just don't want to, not very often it's not people not wanting to take the risk and spending the money. It's usually the other things, you know what I mean? It's not, I don't think it's the risk side of it. I think it's all the other things in life. But, it doesn't matter if you what am I trying to say? It doesn't matter, it's just appreciating what's so great about our situation. And you don't talk to all the other owners, but you listen to my situation is that I don't buy a new car every week. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about buying a new 911 every week. We're not YouTubers that do that. But it's about appreciating what other owners, friends, listeners, when they buy something, you know what I mean, in the community. And that's what it's all about. It's about that appreciation. And we appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like, it was exciting when you told me Marco was getting his turbo, and I hadn't even met Marco.
Well,
it's exciting.
I think you live vicariously through other people, because when you know that they're kind of on like that little particular experience kind of thing, like the night before picking up a 911 that they've never had before, or somebody kind of discovering how good, like, when you switch out the exhaust on a 993 or whatever is, for me, it just sort of makes you sort of semi-relive some of those little things that you kind of go through. It's like, how much joy weirdly that kind of brings you when
it does.
You do it for yourself, but then when you kind of see somebody else kind of contemplating it or literally kind of going through it, it's like, oh yeah, that was quite fun.
Yeah, and as Steve said, going to those meets, like it's hard. It's hard because you keep, I'll add another car to the mix, and I said this to you and Marco yesterday. I'm really keen on the 991.1 or 0.2 turbo, right? And I liked it when I saw it in Bahrain. It's parked in the car park in Bahrain, the apartment in Bahrain. The guy's got a white one. It's not a Turbo S, it's a turbo. Then I found a Chris Harris video, and he was doing the 991.2 review. Right? He was doing a 0.2, 991 turbo 2.2 review. And he says, you don't really need the S. He said, don't get the Turbo S, you don't really need it. The turbo is all you need. He said, and this was for the 991.2, he said, don't worry about getting the base Carrera, the turbo super light. Don't worry about getting the Carrera S, the turbo light, because they're all turbos, right? He said, get the real turbo. Just get the turbo, because this is the pick. This car is the pick. He said, I know it's a little bit more money, but the difference between a Carrera S in the UK and a turbo wasn't that much. He said, this is the one. And I think, the more and more videos you watch out.
You mean a 992 versus a 991 turbo?
No, 991.1 to a 991.2.
Right, okay, yep.
He's talking about, this was a 991.2 review, 991.2 turbo review. Yep. He was just saying that since they all changed over to turbo, all the 911s with the 0.2, that you wouldn't bother getting a Carrera S. You should just get the real turbo, the full turbo, which is the turbo. Don't worry about getting the turbo lights or whatever. You haven't seen that video? And it kind of makes sense. And it kind of makes sense. And he really liked it. He thought it was really good. You know what I mean? But, if you're buying one of those, it's expensive. So I like the turbo. I think the turbo is a good, the 991 turbo, even though it is PDK, is a good all-rounder. It's a comfortable car. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a good all-rounder. That's something that I've put into my mix. And I know a lot of people say I've got so many cars in my mix, but this is just how I work, and that's in the mix as well. But, things aren't so easy, are they? It's not always easy to get what you want.
No, like, I mean, these days, I know even back, even if I wind the clock back, the commitment and everything, like to kind of, plunge into Porsche ownership, 25 years ago was not small, but I keep saying it. I still feel like it's a fairly kind of significant thing these days because there's so much money. Like it really is so much money. And not even just the money to purchase, I think the money to kind of upkeep and, to tinker and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's not a cheap exercise.
Well, it comes to the balancing act. And, Natasha and I have been speaking about this, over the last week. It's do you, how good is the 997 and do you keep it? You know what I mean? Is it the perfect in-between car between modern and classic, Forget about the IMS issues. Forget about all that stuff because every 911 has some issue. You know what I mean? Over the years, every 911's got something wrong with it that goes wrong that people are worried about. And then there's some over the years, in another 10 years' time, people forget about it. So, what is the balance? It's about getting that perfect balance, Steve. Now, I don't think you have the perfect balance with your GT3 and the Macan, even though it's your wife's car and it's used for a purpose. For you, that's not like your perfect balance of Porsches, right? And it's not easy to work it out when you're on a budget. We're not wealthy. Some of us have got a few more dollars than others, but we're not wealthy. I'm not fan on financing, as you know. I don't want to finance anymore, which makes things even different. But for example, I sell my 997 Carrera. Say I trade it in, or I sell it privately. Say if I can get maximum dollars for it, maximum dollars. If I wanted to get a 901 Turbo, for example, I'm still going to need another 160 odd thousand Australian dollars. Now that's a big changeover. You know what I mean? The gap is getting bigger, don't you think?
Yep.
You're laughing, don't you think?
Yep. Oh yeah, no, I'm laughing because it is like, I don't, even though I sort of feel like I've been flippant in my, previous life car history sort of thing, up until this, I remember the sort of numbers in terms of changeover where I kind of thought that I was kidding myself, like given my circumstance, like my earning capacity and my lifestyle and all of that sort of stuff. Like, I could not fathom plowing 160 changeover, but like the God's honest truth is that I know you got to factor in inflation and all of that sort of stuff. So times have changed. It's just that I'm an old man and I live in the past. So I just, like it's just the going rate these days, I suppose, like I just don't think you can kind of do it without sort of spending sort of relatively big money. So that then obviously means that it's a big decision kind of thing.
But the thing is, I think it's come around in the last couple of days that and my wife agrees with this as well. This is her suggestion that we keep the 997, that I keep the 997 and get something else in addition to. Now, is that a Macan? So you've got a practical city car. Is it a Cayenne? Or do you but you're still looking, even in Australia, you're still looking at maybe you could get a diesel Cayenne for 50K, you could get a Macan for like 70, 80K, maybe a bit more. Or do you look at like a Boxster, and they're becoming very thin on the ground. There's not many. I think there's a Boxster S for sale in Victoria at the moment in grey for 41,000, 100,000 kilometres. 41,000 would have got you a very low mileage example a year ago for that same price, probably less. So they're going up. So do you buy a Boxster? You know what I mean? But then, does the Boxster give you everything you want? So you have a 997, you have a Boxster. It's a tricky one. Or do you just wait? Do you wait and do you get, say, a long hood? Do you import a 912? Do you spend the money, 130? And importing a 912 now, a reasonable one you're going to be into the $130,000 mark here in Australia, without a doubt. And then you got to do the work on it when it comes. So maybe you're at 150. So then you're at the same changeover point as, say, if you wanted to change from my 997 to a GTS, or my 997 to a 996.2 GT3, or my 997 to a turbo. You know what I mean? So do you want to have the one car that is comfortable and is compromised in some ways because it's not because it's PDK, but it's not compromised, but it's not as raw because it's newer, right?
Yep.
You see where I'm getting at? Or do you keep the car you have, the 997, which still has the rawness, which still has the analog feel, which still has all those things you like in a 911,
Yep.
and then get something else that is, I guess, older or about the same age. It's not easy to work out. It's a really difficult balancing act. If there's anyone that's listening who thinks it's easy and it's just done, this is why we keep talking about it on the podcast, because it's not easy. And most of the listeners who listen to this podcast, most of the listeners who listen to this podcast go through the same dilemma. I've spoken to enough owners now and enough people on Instagram to know that everyone has this,
Yep. It's really going to be about your end usage, being sort of as realistic about how you're going to use, if it winds up being one car or two cars with the 997 and stuff, like how are you literally going to kind of drive these things, in all honesty? Not what would you necessarily like to do with it.
That's the other point.
How do you really think you're going to wind up using it?
Yeah.
Because I think it's very different if you kind of go, hey, I really want to kind of, drive Great Ocean Road and all of that sort of stuff, versus the reality of if you wind up not being around enough to kind of do those sorts of things. I reckon that's a starting point you got to work out.
Yeah, but it's also like, even for you, Steve, if you picked up a Spider because you like a Spider, right? You pick up the new 4-liter Spider, you've got your GT3, you've got the Macan T, you've got the Macan T, you've got 3 cars. Are you going to get enough use out of those 3 cars? Is it going to be enough? You know what I mean? Is it? It's hard to make it. Not that it's not worthwhile, because everyone wants a Porsche collection, but you can only drive so much in a week.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
know.
Yeah,
I've never been in that
it's
situation.
Funny because Mark and I are laughing about, there was a car there that had, I can't remember what it was, but it was super low miles. It's like, man, how do you keep the Ks down on a car that much? And the only way you can do that is by having like 10 cars in your garage. Because even with me, with my GT3, like I know it was my only car for quite a few years. Now it's not. So it gets driven maybe once or twice a week. Where I live means that wherever I go is a reasonable kind of trip. It's not like I don't live in the inner city, which I used to do, which would have been like a 5-minute trip to something. Like now, if I drive somewhere, it at least winds up being sort of, 20, 30 minutes, which is kind of good. But like, it's very easy for me to rack up, even as an occasion car, really easy for me to rack up like, call it 8,000 K a year. So I can't quite fathom how, some like say comparable kind of GT3s like have 40,000 kind of K on it. Cause like I'd be able to do that easily in like 5 years of ownership.
Yeah. I mean, I've done over, I think I've done 2,500 kilometers since I've been here, and I haven't really been on, it's sort of clocked up very quickly. That's probably what I've done in a year over the past few years.
Yeah. And you would have driven up the coast to see your family a couple of times.
I've done it in 3 months. Yeah. I've done it in 3 months. So it's crazy. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. After seeing so many cars in one spot, so many Porsches, together, it kind of helps you, and then it kind of can frustrate you at the same time. I mean, it helps you that you actually, when you're next to a car, nothing can take that away, that experience when you stand next to it and see it. Like seeing how small the 964 Carrera 4 was, you know what I mean? Like seeing how small some of the cars are now.
So narrow.
And how wide the new ones are, like the new 991.2 Targas, and seeing the turbo, the turbo in real life, the two turbos over there, the 991 turbos, they're big cars, they look like expensive cars. So I do notice that the newer cars, I think the quality, you really do see it in 991s. And I never thought about it too much before, Steve, but they look expensive. You know what I mean? They really do look more expensive than the 997, I have to say, the quality of materials. And I guess the 992 is a step up again. Yeah.
Because it's more modern.
Yeah.
But I think the bit that you can't necessarily predict, I know we're in some weird kind of luxury good bubble at the moment, but whenever that does burst, it's really hard to say like in 20 years time how you're going to look back at, like any of these sort of new age cars, to sort of see if it really will be as timeless as, as maybe, the way that we kind of, look back at a 70s car or whatever else. Like it's weird. I was listening to Spike's recent podcast and he had the Tesla head designer on there.
Right.
Like I'm not a Tesla fan. I don't like the way that the cars look. I know that probably goes against popular opinion. I don't think there's anything that special about the kind of car design. And he was sort of saying how, he's sort of designed like a a very timeless car in the Model S. And it's like, there's nothing timeless about that. Like in 20 years' time, like I'm not going to look back at that thing and kind of go, that's an iconic car. No way. Like you got much more of a chance with the 911 for sure, but definitely not with a Model S.
I want to know why Tesla all of a sudden changed their main screen in their cars from portrait to landscape. What made them do that? Because the new ones are all coming out landscape. They're not portrait anymore.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know. Maybe he feels like he's the Volkswagen of the future. You know, like the Beetle. He's like the Beetle, the car for the people.
Yeah, which
the car for the people.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's an argument sort of saying that because they're right on the kind of forefront of EVs sort of thing. But I'm talking more from a, like I've not been in a Tesla, so I'm talking out my bum again. Like I'm sure that the whole experience in terms of the software and the interface and all of that sort of stuff is truly kind of groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I'm just talking purely like the shape of the car itself. Like I look at the car and I still kind of go, looks like a Mazda. Like doesn't look that,
the front of the Model 3s is a bit weird. I see a lot of them in Sydney, but I think they're a little bit soft at the front. I don't mind them. I think they suit a purpose and they suit certain people. And,
sure,
I think the Model Y is probably better out of that Tesla range when it eventually gets launched, when they eventually can make them. But, but back to the Porsche thing, Steve. We always think of this question, and I think you said to me it was a video I did on my YouTube channel, I can't remember, about being Porscheless, as I termed it or called it. Is it really that bad? You know what I mean? Well, I think it is. You know what I mean? And I think it is for me because I know being away from my car for so long, even though yesterday I had one of those days where it was good going in the morning, but I had to drive a few other times during the day. And by the end of the day, I didn't want to drive anymore because the traffic was heavy yesterday. And it was one of those, I know it was summer's out and I'm probably complaining, but it could have been worse. Like I could have been somewhere else in the world and not being able to drive the car at all, which, I remember those times in Bahrain sitting there or in London thinking, I just want to go out for a drive. I just want to go downstairs and get the car and go for a drive. So
which would be really frustrating, right?
Yeah, it's frustrating. But, I think it'd be more frustrated if you didn't own a 911 or you got rid of your 911 because, in 3 years' time, I want to buy a 991 Turbo or I want to buy a long hood. So I'm going to sell my car now and I'm going to save for the next 3 years. I'm going to save $10,000 a month and then I'm going to buy that car in 3 years' time. I think that would be more frustrating and I don't think I could do it. And that's what makes the buying process difficult at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I've only done it, like I had my 964 and I traded that for my 993. So I was never Porscheless then. I sold my 993 and sat on it for a couple of months because I knew that I wanted the GT3. So then I had to kind of wait. And I can't remember how much time it was. This is a bit first world problem type thing, but it was probably about 4 or 5 months, I think. I can't remember exactly. And it wasn't that fun, like as a proper kind of car enthusiast, where every week you kind of look forward to kind of jumping in the thing and driving it or, giving it a wash or doing some stupid thing like sticking a sticker on it or messing with the exhaust or whatever it is. To not have it there at the time I do remember it sort of being not much fun or a little bit kind of empty sort of thing. And even then I had the benefit of, I think, predominantly I borrowed my mum's car. So whilst I was between Porsches, I had a C63.
Life's hard, mate. Life's hard.
So exactly. It's like first world problems, but like it just the notion of kind of being Porscheless, even then, like still having a C63 to kind of, have a little bit of fun in or whatever else. There's still nothing like it. There's still nothing like sort of having a Porsche or a 911 or whatever to kind of, sort of keep you occupied and sort of keep you kind of going.
Yeah.
I recognize completely that sounds super spoilt and very entitled or whatever else, but
No, but when you already own a 911 or you already own a Porsche, I mean, it's hard. It's hard because you have to make the decision in your mind whether you're willing to give up your current Porsche or your current 911 and wait for something else. Are you willing to do that?
I think I've
and
said
I know
that
in
to
my
you
mind
too.
at the moment, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to give up the 997 to do that. So what's the option? Get something else.
I've said that to you because
cheaper.
I remember you were in Bahrain sort of pondering whether or not you should just sort of sell the thing because you felt like it was just sort of sitting there and you like nothing was happening to it sort of thing.
I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, and I think I remember sort of counselling you like many times, kind of going, "Oh, mate, if I was you, I wouldn't do it because unless you really need the money, sort of thing, it's just not particular." Like, I think the problem is that once you've done it, like once you've kind of gotten into a 911, if you then back out of it and you don't have one, that's really hard.
Yes.
If you've never had one, then no problem because you don't really know what you're missing out on.
Yep.
But once you've experienced and you're in it, like it's really, really hard to kind of go back.
Yep. That's a good way to end the podcast. I just want to go back to the final question that everyone's been asking. Have you changed your exhaust?
I'm thinking about it. I'm waiting to go on one more kind of good drive with you guys or by myself if I have to, kind of thing. But I've been living with the Acura for it's probably been maybe a month now.
Yeah.
And I think it might be too sedate. I think
Really?
I need to kind of go back to the loud one. Like if I have to choose between the two, like one that's a fraction too loud and one that's too quiet, I think the better one would be to be too loud.
Right. So you're going to change it out.
Well, again, it goes back to usage. I think it's just because like I haven't been on a fun drive, like I'm with you guys in a bit. And like the drives that I have done, I've gone to see my parents, which is sort of like a 30-minute drive, kind of through Sydney, or 40-minute drive through Sydney, sorry. But you can't really kind of get the car going unless you want to, start breaking a few kind of rules here and there. So I think when I've got the louder exhaust, it gives me some of the excitement and some of the occasion and all that sort of stuff,
Right.
which I'm not getting with the Acura, or not enough of it. So I'm missing it. I am missing the loud exhaust.
Fair enough. Makes sense. I meant to tell you actually on this week's Owner Stories with Al, Witty 924. On his 924, he sourced, because I asked him about the sound of his car, and he managed to source an unused Jan Speed silencer in middle section. So it's got that, and he said it's fantastic. It's like that full, he calls it the sound of the 80s. Like it's just the perfect fit for the 924, the Jan Speed rear silencer. Some guy bought one for his 924, didn't fit it. So then Al found it and put it on his. So I'm sure it sounds really, really cool.
Even just hearing that Spider that we just talked about, hearing that kind of start up and kind of move off and everything, it's pretty loud. It's quite leery.
But it was
not even hearing
too loud. I didn't think it was too loud because he was revving it up, that guy, at first.
Yeah, but even when he sort of pulled out of the car park, it's pretty, I know that probably would have been a cold start, so it was a bit more raucous maybe, but I don't know. I think maybe I'm just a child at heart and I just kind of go, oh yeah.
Change it, mate. Go for a drive and then, take a drive and then you can change it. It's a quick change.
It's only going to cost me $110 to swap it back. So
that's nothing. That's like one takeaway meal.
Depending on what you're eating.
All right, mate. Let's go.
Cool.
Good to be back.
Yeah. Sorry about last week.
I'm sorry as well to everyone. I could have done one, but I didn't. I didn't have an owner's stories actually because I had to. I actually didn't have an owner's stories for last week either because I actually had to cancel someone because something came up and then I couldn't reschedule. So then it was sort of all over the place.
Yeah. Right.
All right, mate. Have a good day. Let's go.
Oh, good. Yeah, you too. Cheers, mate.
All right. See ya. All right, everyone. That's Steve coming in from Sydney, same as me. My name is Michael Barth, and that's it for today. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Bye for now.